actually, we'll go ahead and call it 9, I think. It says 9 on my deal, but I think we're just waiting maybe for Joe, maybe.
It's up to you. We're ready to go.
Joe Fernandez. Okay, well, bells are ringing, so we'll call the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board to order at 9 o'clock on December 13th, 2017. Any public comment, Mr. Tejas?
No, ma'am, none received.
Okay, we'll go to item number 3, adoption of minutes for the RMA board meeting November 8th, 2017. Everyone should have gotten the minutes for review. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of
So
November 8th.
moved.
Thank you.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 3. Any opposed? Okay. Item 3 has been approved. Item number 4, presentation, discussion, and action on board resolutions authorizing change orders to the construction contract with International Eagle Enterprises for the Old Waco Tanks project from the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan. A, change order number 3, relocation of water meter for landscape irrigation. B, change order number 8, resolution of roadway conflicts with certain existing inlets. C, change order 9, reconstruction of a channel, rock wall, and pond. And change order number 13, relocation of existing signal controller boxes. Mr. Tejas.
Thank you. Raymond Tejas, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. So today we have, as read into the record, 4 different change orders proposed for the Old Waco Tanks project. We have Mr. David Head here from our General Engineering Consultant team to brief you on this item. At the outset, though, I did want to mention that I've been working with Mr. Head on a different approach on how to deal with change orders, and this speaks to Mr. Nieburn's comments at the last month's meeting. So I intend to be back to you all at our next meeting with a revised approach towards dealing with how we propose and approve change orders, and tie it really more in line with the authorities that are already granted pursuant to the existing policies of the RMA. So that'll be back to you at the next board meeting. But for now, we have Mr. Head, as I mentioned, from our General Engineering Consultant team. He's going to brief us on the 4 proposed change orders.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning. For the record, I'm David Head with the GEC, and we're talking about the CMP change orders for the Old Waco tanks. And there are 4 of them, but this is the map you've seen on Old Waco tanks, and down at the bottom in the red you can see where that is, but the map has changed a little bit, so you'll be seeing this new revised map which shows the city limits in the area of the CMP project, so a little different. So the first change order, well, the ones in green are the ones that have been approved to date. And then the ones in orange or the beige color are the ones that we will be talking about for approval today. So number 3 is the irrigation source for landscaping. What that was is in the plans. The source for the water for the irrigation was, for the landscaping, was not in the correct location, and so we had to bring in some lines to get that source into where it needed to be. So that's what this one is. It's for $5,671.10. Number 8 is the removal of existing inlets that were in conflict with the roadway. This is up at the north end of the project, close to I-10. There was some inlets that were existing that were not known, not shown in the plans. And so those will be removed, and then there was a few others that needed to be, that were in conflict also, that needed to be removed also. So that's $5,026.06. Then number 9 is the reworking of the pond. What this was is, if you remember, we had some heavy rains back in, I believe it was late summer, and this pond is down in a low spot on the front end of the project up near I-10. And so the water comes across, it looks like comes across from the other side of I-10, flows down into this, and there's such an amount of water that the design that was originally done It took out pretty much a whole length of the rock wall for the pond. So we went back to TxDOT, who was the designer for this, and we asked them to look at their design for it, and they came back with some revisions to what they wanted to do there. So the rock wall was redone, and then they asked us to put a swell in there to catch the water and keep it away from that pond and to move it further downstream. And there was quite a bit of dirt work that needed to be done for this, and some concrete lining for that ditch in there. So kind of keep things from hitting the rock wall and things. So that was basically a rework. It was $139,155. And then change order number 13 at the bottom is the relocation of some existing signal controller box, which was up and close to the gateway on I-10 on the north side. So that was in the way of the intersection that we're putting in there now. So it's just another oversight from design on it. So that one is for $28,144. Questions?
Any questions for Mr. Head? Mr. Smith?
Based on the tour that you gave me there when we went and looked at that drainage thing, has that been completed? Has that been done, or is this the funding of it? Is it yet to be done?
I believe it's pretty much 99% done. There may be a little bit going on, but it's pretty much done at this point. We're given the plans by TxDOT to go through and rework it, and so this is to pay for those changes.
Well, it's pretty obvious to us when we went and looked at that the original design, there's no way in the world that was going to work. It was pretty much how does the responsibility of something like that flow as far as the fiscal responsibility, the design problems in the beginning that didn't make it? How does that work?
So each project is a little bit different. This one is unique in that it has federal funding sources as well as vehicle registration fee local dollars. However, I think the more general response is that this one is that it was designed by TxDOT and will be accepted by the city of Socorro. So in this case, the designer is actually responsible for the correction of it. So the designer, which is TxDOT in this case, went back and redesigned it. Now the funding sources again are split. So there's the majority of on this one, I want to say 100% of the funds being used for this correction are coming from the federal side, which are the TxDOT funds.
Okay, thank you.
I have just one on the ponding, miscellaneous pond details. There is a sign that's going to be placed onto the rock wall, I believe. Maybe it's just an oversight, but the sign says no transpassing. So that will be corrected, I'm sure.
It will be correct when it goes up. It will not say.
Just wanted to check, make sure.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Reyes. That'll be corrected, I imagine. Any other questions for Mr. Head? Entertain a motion to approve items 4A, B, C, and D.
So move.
Second?
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item 4 has been approved. Item number 5, presentation, discussion, and action on board resolutions authorizing change orders to the construction contract with Paso del Norte Track Works for the El Paso Streetcar Project. Change order number 25, issues related to installation of storm drain system, and change order number 26, unsuitable subgrade and removal of previously unknown concrete. And Mr. Tejas?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Today we have with us Gil Gardner, who is the construction manager from the RMA's general engineering consultant team, and he's going to brief us on these two proposed change orders. As a reminder, these two were referenced at the last board meeting. But now they've been finalized, and we're bringing them back for a full briefing. I would also mention on this one, my intention is to skip the January board meeting. Everything seems to be lining up so far, so hopefully we can do that, so you can have January off. But in order to do that, there's a couple of moving parts. And one other thing I wanted to do, though, as part of this briefing, is to provide a kind of an outline of what's going to happen in terms of the streetcar between now and the end of the year and into January, in the event that we skip January, because this is a really heavy time for the infrastructure. Well, I say heavy. There's a lot of major milestones being hit. While the work winds down, there are several things that are going to happen in these coming months that I wanted to brief you on, like I say, in the event that we skip January. So anyhow, with that in mind, Mr. Gardner, we'll have him give a brief project update and also a briefing on these two proposed change orders.
Good morning. I'm
Good
Gilbert
morning.
Gardner, the construction manager for the El Paso streetcar. And as Raymond said, what I'd like to do is to give you a little description of the project progress and where we are today and where we're going, and then we'll discuss these two change orders. The maintenance and storage facility, the MSF, is 99% complete. And in fact, we're in the process right now of doing the work to do the handover to Sun Metro so that they can then take possession of the facility and start moving their office, their equipment in and stuff like that. And we hope to have that accomplished before the end of the month. All of the embedded track work, as you can see, is 100% complete. Everything has been done. It's all been tested, with the exception of a couple of the powered switches, which we will handle in January. We will do the testing in January. The MSF civil and track work there is about 95% complete. The only thing we have to do on that is a little bit of punch list items, and that's all within the maintenance facility and the downtown transit center. The total infrastructure, including everything, is as of this month was about 93% complete. Now, let me clarify that in the sense that all of the civil and track work, drainage work, underground work, and stuff like that is basically 100% complete. We're just doing the punch list items right now. Over the course of the next 4 months, we will install the rest of the OCS wire. We'll finish up the OCS wire downtown, in the downtown loop, before Christmas. And then we will complete the uptown loop OCS wire and do our tensioning and static testing on that over the next 3 months, and finish that up in late March, ready for testing on the uptown facility. The vehicles are about 50%, 49% complete. When we do, there's a picture there of the vehicle there. You can kind of see they're beginning to look like them. The old vehicles there, and that's vehicle number 1 and 2, isn't it? Those are vehicles 1 and 2, so they're really coming to board. They're on schedule. We'll expect our first vehicle to arrive the latter part of January, and we'll be ready for testing. We'll do the downtown testing on the first vehicle. When the second vehicle arrives in March, by that time we will have the uptown loop ready for testing, and we will be testing both vehicles. At that point, everything will be tested. We'll do our integration testing, and we hope to be finished with the infrastructure ready to go, ready to turn over to the operator in late, I'd say late April, about that time frame, maybe early May. A lot of that depends upon working together with Sun Metro operations people, making certain that everybody's on board.
Is that ahead of schedule?
Pardon?
Would that make us ahead of schedule?
That's significantly ahead of
Great.
schedule.
Congratulations on that. Thank you.
The initial contract schedule had us completing in November 2018. And right now, that our current schedule is about May the 1st of 2018. And then there's an additional 90-day, which is a kind of a insurance bonding turnover that's 90 days later. which was in 2019 originally, now it'll be in August of 2018. So we are ahead of schedule. The Father Ron sidewalk improvements, 90% complete. In fact, after this meeting, my office engineer and I, in our street clothes, are gonna go down and they're doing the final 4 water fire hydrants that they have to relocate. And there's one which they're doing now. They've done 2 of them. They'll finish the other 2 this week. That'll all be done. So Father Ron, while it's 90% complete now, it'll be 100% complete by Christmas. The Cincinnati improvements, they say are 80%. I think we showed Susan a picture. I don't know if you guys saw it last night,
That's
the columns
great.
that are up.
That's great.
And they will also be out of there by Christmas. They may have a little bit more striping to do after the first of the year, but it'll just be signing and striping if they have to do it.
If I could chime in here too, though, there has been a change requested by the property owners in the area for the addition of the build out really of patios, so that some of those restaurants and bars can have more outdoor service. And the city's kind of gone back and forth on how they want to handle that. So I think what the city has now requested of us is that we leave it as planned. We, instead of building out the sidewalks to the extent that we would leave it as is, pretty much as is now. The city would come back later with a separate contract and handle the patio component. So while we're going to finish up here at 100% before Christmas, there will be some additional work into the next year that'll be handled by the city of El Paso. I just want to make that point.
That's on this, that's on the
Majority.
city improvements?
Right. So if
So the patios are gonna be built on private property or on city property?
well, so I don't know the details, right? I believe that there's a major section that's on the city right of way where the city will handle those. I know that there's discussion about private property and how to handle that, but we'll leave that to the city.
That's up to the city.
Yes, sir.
They're gonna have to
Curious.
have that discussion.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons it's not in our contract. We're trying to wrap this up, and
I'm sure they'd like the city to build the patios for them.
yeah, but we're trying to close out our contract and get it done.
Oh, that'll be on the front page of the paper, I promise. Okay, thank you.
Anyway, that is basically pretty much the status of where we are on the project. For the next year, our systems group, our systems testing group will be out working very, very closely with the systems contractor to finalize all of the OCS and traction power and get the system ready for the vehicles as they arrive. The vehicles also will be arriving, I believe the last vehicle is due to arrive in August, isn't it?
I believe that's correct. That
I
sounds
believe
right.
somewhere in August. They'll be coming about every 1 to 2 months after the first 2, and then the last vehicle arrives in August. Yeah, so, but the infrastructure, we expect to be finished very much earlier than that.
You know, if I could make one other point, just very briefly, Gil's correct that we are ahead of schedule with regard to the vehicles. However, there's a lot of moving parts, obviously, that Sun Metro is involved in. So while we're ahead and we may be ready, I think it's just important to note that we may not be putting vehicles out on the street earlier than originally planned. So we may still make those dates. But so technical distinction, but I think an important one, because I don't want the public to think that we are going to be rolling vehicles out any sooner than the contract dates, and more importantly than when Sun Metro is ready. So agreed, we are looking like we're ahead of schedule, but I think we're going to follow the program in terms of the contract dates.
All right, just some estimated completion dates here,
Excuse me,
what
Mr.
I've kind of gone
Mr.
over.
Smith,
Yeah.
do you have a
But
comment?
how are the vehicles being transported back in their completed state?
They'll be transported by a special truck. There's a flatbed, a semi and a flatbed. They actually have them designed that will carry the vehicle. It'll be all in one piece except the pantograph won't be on it. That comes separately. And they will be off a special truck that allows the vehicle to be pulled off and downloaded. It'll straddle on the track and it'll just run right off the trailer onto the track. And in fact, we'll have a program when that first vehicle comes in. and it'll probably be a media event so people can see it, how it comes off the truck.
That's right. We're currently planning to do that on Father Rom Street. So we'll have media event as mentioned. Our outreach group is putting something together, working with the city to make sure that the public gets to see the first one come in. Then the rest of them we'll just do almost as normal course of business. But the first one I think is a big deal, so we're going to make some noise about it.
So they're constructing this flatbed specifically for this purpose?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so
They
they're-
have them, yeah, there are special haulers that haul these types of vehicles around. And the one hauler that they're using is the one that's used quite often for these PCC cars. And they know what they're doing. They're very, very good at it.
So they're basically gonna come one at a time then, is that
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, in fact, the first one comes late January, more likely early February, and then thereafter about month and a half between each of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you see up there on the screen, these are some estimated dates when we expect to be finished with everything. Like I said, the civil and track work, December of 2017. So they're going to be out of there this month with all of the civil and track work. Same thing with the maintenance facility and the milestone for the downtown loop. Because the milestone includes testing, we're delaying the testing until January of 2018. So the milestone 1 will be January of 2018, almost concurrent with the vehicle. The Uptown Loop will be March of 2018, concurrent with the vehicle 2 arrival, and that'll be milestone 2. Will be May of 2018, and that's after we've done our configuration testing and said it's ready to go. And then we will do the system integration testing and startup, working closely with Sun Metro, and we expect to be finished with it by July of 2018. All right, now we've got a couple of change orders. As he said, they were discussed the last time. These are kind of part of our cleanup change orders that we're going through here. The first one is the storm drain modifications. During the course of the project, we ran into some storm drains, manholes that had to be adjusted that we either discovered that weren't there. We had to adjust the 3 manholes on Oregon, adjust some storm drain on Kansas and Franklin. We had to raise a existing graded inlet on Baltimore and put a new installed graded inlet at Baltimore and Mesa. There where there used to be consistent flooding, and we needed to take care of that. We had to correct a junction box on Stanton Street and put a pre-priced flat top. We had to set it to grade. We did this during the force account as we'd go through to keep the project on schedule and to keep out of the public way. And rather than close it down, we went ahead and authorized them to do this. And these are some of the various costs on it. The storm drain modifications over the course of this force account totaled up to $101,000. Worked closely with the contractor to get the best prices on it. Much of it is overruns and underruns. And this is what it costs. The city or the El Paso Water Utilities, it will be accepting these final ones because we actually corrected some errors in them and they've accepted the final ones there. And we're going through our final inspection and accepting on that. This is $101,000. The change order number 26 is differing site conditions. And these were found at various locations, so we had to do additional work. This is primarily the subgrade material. Unsuitable subgrade material on Kansas Street as we were working in there, and we just found some clay, some really, really bad stuff. The most interesting was the unsuitable subgrade up on Stanton, where everybody expects it to be rock. And just south of Schuster, we ran into an area that was a big site, a very long area of clay that you could almost make pottery out of. And we had to remove all of that clay down several feet and split it into areas so we could keep the traffic moving. We had to pull the clay out, dump in a bunch of rock, work closely with the city, so they, using their procedures and everything like this. and had to repair that. We also found a significant amount of concrete rubble was found along Stanton Street that somebody had dumped in there, or whatever it was, over the past probably 75 or 100 years. And then we found some additional rubble at the downtown transit center as we were putting in our last track there, which we had to clean up. And then we had to remove a lot of slurry and concrete utility caps and redo them so we could put the required depth of asphalt pavement in, because we were finding that the existing pavement sometimes was only a couple of inches thick, so we had to go in and rebuild a lot of that. And the cost on that, Father Ron to Paisano, was a little small amount, but it was only about $2,800. The big cost was the subgrade material from Crosby to Rim up there. That's where it was really bad. We spent, I don't know if any of you had to drive up there and you saw us working on that time, and that's what it was there. It was almost $190,000. And then the miscellaneous concrete removal, where we just they had to get rid of it and stuff like that. The total cost on this was $234,594.19. So the budget impact on this, with the change orders 25 and 26, the sum of the total change orders was $335,000. The total cost of all the change orders to date is $9,235,350.83. It still remains on schedule, and it's within our budget. It was within our allocated contingency budget that we used for this material.
Mr. Warden?
How much money is left then of our contingency?
So I intend to bring that back to you all. We have, I'd say roughly between $1.5 million left over for you. So if you recall, what we talked about last time is that once we got these 2 remaining change orders out, then we'll be back with hopefully one final wrap up. And we're currently looking at February for that, if I remember correctly.
February, we want to do just one. The contractor said he'd be ready by February and would take it before the board, because we have to sit down and go over all of the overruns and underruns and wrap up and verify and be able to explain everything.
One additional question, if I may. So I'm just curious, I think the board would like to know. So let's say we have $500,000 left over.
Right, so that's where I was going, right? So
Yeah.
when we come back to you in February, we'll have hopefully that final wrap up and any other small change orders that we identify between now and then. And then that will give us our final remaining balance. At that point, then I'll come to you with what are generally referred to as owner-initiated change orders. So those are improvements to the project that are valuable to Sun Metro and the city after we leave. So that's items like canopies, adding canopies that were not in the current plans. Adding, basically, it's the wish list. So when we go back in time, the original arrangement with Sun Metro was that here's the plans, and then here's the wish list. Once we get the plans complete, then we'll go through and prioritize the wish list, obviously with city Sun Metro input, and then we'll come back to you and ask for the approvals to actually implement those.
I think where I was going on my question is, so we, as the RMA, does not get to keep any of that funding for any of our projects or any of our...
Unfortunately not. The grant documents are pretty clear about all funds being used on the project. Now, the reverse of that, though, is that we're not returning any funds to TxDOT either, because there are consumables that TxDOT could use. We could spend millions and millions of dollars on all the things that Sun Metro will use operating this system. So we intend to spend down the $97 million, but unfortunately the RMA won't be able to take any of that home.
Thank you.
Yeah, one item, if you don't mind, is there are in the budget administrative fees that have been taken out of this. So it's not like 100% of the fee was a pass-through. There are administrative fees.
As with all
for it.
RMA projects, I bill my time to it. So, but that's not, I think Mr. Wardy's question was
I know. Do we
different.
have any left? I just didn't want them to think that, we just pushed it all through.
Gotta ask.
Sir.
Mr. Smith, did you have a question?
I understand you're gonna be doing some stuff, reference change orders and that kind of stuff as far as how we handle it. I've really got the cart and a horse mixed up here. We've done the change orders, and so it's coming before this board here for approval to pay the bill that's already been incurred for executing all of this. My question is that the way we're gonna continue to do business?
Well, so this is a unique one, and really my comments earlier are to exactly address what you're raising. This one's unique, and in fact, actually, we've never had the number of projects that we have going on like we do now, where we have the comprehensive mobility plan that has 7, 8, 10 projects going on at once, streetcar, all these other projects at the same time. So we've never had this issue before where we have a number of change orders coming to the board each month. So I think we need to step back, and we've begun that. The general engineering consultant and I have begun that process to identify what makes the most sense in a more holistic approach. Rather, what we've done in the past is each project we've dealt with change orders specific to that project. So for streetcar in particular, there was a resolution that was passed by the board several years back when we first started this project that authorized the executive director to authorize specific change orders up to a certain amount. But that resolution also required me to bring them back to you all for ratification. So this, what you're seeing today, is done by a resolution that was specific to streetcar. What I'd like to do is take a more holistic view of all of the projects that we envision going forward and have one policy. And really what I'm looking at doing is tracking what the city does and some other governmental agencies here in the region, which is upon award, the board would then grant me authority to issue change orders up to a certain percentage of the contract amount. And then I could bring them back to you for informational purposes, but you wouldn't be forced to act on something that technically had already been completed. So that's kind of a glance at what we're looking at bringing back at the next board meeting.
Thank you, it makes a lot more sense.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Carden? Entertain a motion for item number 5, A and B.
So moved?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 5 has been approved. Item number 6, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute and submit documentation of eminent domain authority to the Texas Comptroller as required by statute. Mr. Tejas.
Thank you. This is a regular item that we bring each year. Several legislative sessions ago, the Texas legislature impose this requirement on all entities that have the power of eminent domain. Really what it does is that it requires the Texas Comptroller to keep an updated list of those entities, what powers they have, where it comes from, how often they've used it in the prior year, and any plans to use that power in the coming year. So each year I bring it to you asking for authority to submit this documentation. Obviously, as you know, we have not used eminent domain power, and we have no plans to use it in the coming year. So that, along with the backup, within the backup, I should say, you'll see that I included the form items. So all of that information will be provided to the comptroller upon your approval of this item. So with that, and subject to your questions, I would recommend approval.
Any questions for Mr. Tejas?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item 6 is approved. Item number 7, discussion and action on a board resolution to approve the executive director's annual performance evaluation, authorize the RMA chair to communicate the results of the evaluation to the city of El Paso, and take other actions as necessary.
On this item, obviously, I won't be handling it. So we have Norman Gordon, outside counsel to the Camino Real RMA, here to walk you through this item.
Good morning, Madam Chairman.
Good morning.
This item is an item related to personnel. You have each completed some evaluation, and I recommend, if you'd like to, that you consider going into executive session to discuss it, which would require a motion and second to do so.
Have a motion to go to
So
executive.
moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So the time is now 9:34 a.m. on December 13th, 2017, and the RMA Board of Directors will now retire to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and 551.074 for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel for deliberations regarding legal issues associated with personnel matters. We will reconvene the open meeting upon conclusion of the executive session. Did Jim have to leave?
No, he's in the restroom.
Okay. Okay, may I have a motion to reconvene in open session, please?
So move.
Second?
It's been moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. It is now 10:08 a.m. on December 13th, 2017, and the Board of Directors of the RMA is reconvening in open meeting. It's open meeting after deliberations in executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071 and 551.074. The Board consulted with legal counsel and discussed legal issues associated with personnel matters. The Board took no action in executive session. Thank you. Mr. Gordon.
You have on item number, I lost my agenda.
Seven.
Seven. Item number 7, we have prepared a resolution for your consideration, and if you'd like, Madam Chair, I'll read it into the
Yes,
record.
please.
and-
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
And then you can decide whether or not to take action. It's Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board Resolution, whereas the City of El Paso and the CRRMA Board executed a management agreement dated September 2, 2014, wherein the City of El Paso provides management services in part through the Executive Director who is employed by contract with the City of El Paso, and whereas pursuant to the management agreement, the city has employed the executive director for the CRRMA, whose performance evaluation is conducted by the CRRMA. And whereas the performance evaluation of the executive director for the period ending August 31, 2017 exceeds expectations, and whereas the board desires that the evaluation be communicated to the City of El Paso in order that the executive director's salary and benefits may be adjusted in accordance with the executive director's contract with the City of El Paso. Now therefore be it resolved by the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority that the chairman be authorized to communicate to the City of El Paso the results of the executive director's performance evaluation and recommend to the City of El Paso that the executive director's salary and benefits be increased in accordance with the terms of the agreement. And number 1, that the executive director's salary and benefits should be increased in accordance with the provisions of Exhibit A to his employment agreement dated September 1, his employment agreement effective September 1, 2017. And it's passed and approved this 13th day of December 2017 if you take action.
Thank you. Everyone heard the resolution?
Motion
Open
to approve?
motion. Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Raymond, thank you very much for all that you do for our organization and for the city, and we know you work hard and like 7 days a week hard. So we thank you for all that you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
you. Okay. Let's move on to item number 8, update, discussion, and action on the Executive Director's report. A, construction advertisement for Eastlake Boulevard Phase 1, and B, Director of Finance job posting. Mr. Tess.
Thank you. This item will be very brief. These are just quick updates on these two items. Eastlake Boulevard Phase 1, I think we've discussed this a couple times in the past. This is a project that we have now advertised for construction. We had completed the design prior to that. So here's some details on this. This one is actually out for advertisement now. This is the project that runs, rebuilds Eastlake, basically from I-10 heading up to Darrington Road. If you remember, Eastlake Phase 2 is currently under construction from Darrington all the way down to, I've gone blank on the name. anyhow, this is the extension, or really the completion of Eastlake from Darrington back down to I-10. At the conclusion of this project, we'll have a 6-lane divided roadway with bike lanes, hike and bike paths. It was advertised on December 3rd and again on December 12th. The engineer's probable cost for this particular project, construction side, is $26 million with about an 18-month construction period. So we have a question and answer period that is open now as well. The questions are due on December 18th. We will provide answers by January 5th, and the bid opening, when all the bids are due, is January 11th. So we intend to be back to you in February requesting approval and award. So that's Eastlake Boulevard Phase 1. Very excited about that project, getting that out the door. The second item, item 8B, then, is also a notice. This one I've shared with you by email as well. The Director of Finance job posting has been posted on our website. We've also provided it to the city. They've posted it for us, just as they do for the water utility as well as the Metropolitan Planning Organization. I've seen since that it's also been picked up by other websites, including specifically governmentjobs.com. In fact, we've received inquiries from folks using governmentjobs.com. So that's exciting as well. This one is now open for, we're soliciting resumes and the like. That date closes January 17th. And so far we've received 4 submittals and several phone calls. So I'm excited about that. We still got some time to go. So that's just, if nothing else, to alert the public to it. If they haven't seen it already, go to our website and you can find that job description. So subject to your questions, that's all I have for you.
Well, that means that maybe you just have to work 6 days a week now, Raymond.
That's the goal.
Right?
Drop it by a day. Yes, ma'am.
Any questions? We don't have any action on this,
No, ma'am.
right?
Well, to confirm, and it's posted with the city website, is that correct?
It's on the city's
Jobs?
website as well as the RMA's website, and then also the government jobs website, and I'll find out where else.
And has there been any other outreach? Do you know of other folks, or have you gotten suggestions?
I've not, no. If you have additional locations, please let me know, and I'll forward it.
Yeah, we would encourage people to look at that and review that and
Definitely.
apply.
Please let me know of any additional location. I'll share it with them.
Okay, any other business? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the RMA Regional Mobility Authority is adjourned on December 13th at 10:15. Thank you and happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, yes.